Hey there, YouTubers! This is Kevin from Survivor Super Fun Time Show, and we had episode 3 of Survivor 49, another awesome episode. This one, obviously, kind of a historic moment. I mean, we've had medevacs before in the past, but we haven't had one that we know of from a snake bite, and we haven't had such an in-depth look at some of the medical stuff that's involved on the island itself, going to the med camp, which I'll give my thoughts on that in a second. But it was super interesting episode. Unfortunate vote out, an unfortunate immunity loss, and there's a lot of good stuff, including idols that we could talk about in a second. But before we get into the episode itself, make sure to hit the subscribe button to this channel. We'll be talking about Survivor the rest of the season. We'll have interviews, we'll have some recaps, all that fun stuff, where we'll be talking all about Survivor and the past and looking forward to season 50. All right, so getting to the episode, before we get into the bigger thing, I want to take a second and sidetrack to the Uli camp. Obviously, Uli Beach is going well. You have Nate trying to assimilate, trying to fight off the Murtaghs and make sure that he is, a member of this tribe. Savannah still kicking ass. Sage feeling a little bit isolated. This gorgeous, really funny woman is, basically just vocalizing to Shannon in particular, saying, hey, I feel like I am kind of on the outs. And when I grew up, I was kind of the weird kid to some degree, and I was kind of left off, which again, surprising because, I've turned the page on Sage a little bit. In preseason, I was like, all right, I'm not sure how this is going to go. In this game, when she said like, hey, I felt like I was on the outside growing up, I'm really surprised. She seems like she'd be an in-crowd type of lady. But, I thought that was a really cool, vulnerable moment. It was cool that she was telling Shannon, who was doing a great job of being the in-between for multiple players. Now, Shannon did squeal immediately to Savannah, unfortunately, and Savannah seems like she's kind of running things at this moment. So Savannah now can't really trust Sage, and Sage and Juwan were on the outside anyway. So now Sage looks like maybe she's moved in front of Juwan to be the first one to get voted out of Uli, if they have to, and we'll talk about that later on. Now, based on a tweet that Savannah put out after the episode aired, she added context to this. She said, I was also really crushed to find out that Sage mentioned my name during that vulnerable conversation with Shannon because, well, at the time, the girls all had an alliance. Shannon, Sage, and Savannah, the triple S's. They had kind of a separate bond from the big four that we know about on Uli, and said we weren't going to go for each other. So when, Sage is having that conversation with Shannon about how she's on the outs, and then flips it to strategy and says, we really need to look out for Savannah. Savannah's the big one on this tribe. It hurt Savannah. It wounded her when she found out about it. So kind of a big issue, but they can't handle it in the way they were probably planning to because of what's going to happen in episode 4, which looks like an impending swap. So that is an interesting dynamic that Sage kind of kicked off and Savannah had to kind of absorb. And Shannon, she was the in-between that made it happen. But aside from, potential betrayal, the big thing that happened is they had a group search for an idol. It always is a good idea when there's a group search for an idol. Everybody absolutely does exactly what they say they're going to do. Lies. Rizzo goes out there and finds the Beware advantage. I'm very excited for him because, I said it in my podcast, my recap with Mike Gabler from Survivor 43. I said, if the only idol, if it's going to be found by anyone, I would just bet. If I could pick one person, I would bet it's going to be Rizzo. And that's what happened. I think a guy who calls himself the Riz God has max potential to play that idol in a glorious or disastrous way. And that's really what I want from idol plays, quite frankly. Like, I want it to be really bad or really good. And I think Rizzo, he oozes both of those things. So he doesn't have the idol yet, but when he does, I think it's going to be awesome. And same thing for the Hina tribe. They have a good big group search all together. And then Steven and MC, who are kind of creating a own separate bond, a two within, our larger group, they find the Beware advantage, specifically MC, and shoves it right down those pants. And they read it together and they say, this is something that we can establish together. And MC, she's showing a lot of signs and being able to be one of the top players of the game. And it's certainly in a budding situation. Again, she doesn't have the idol either, just like Rizzo. But she does have a tremendous opportunity in order to move herself forward, especially with an impending swap coming on. So I love this from MC, and I love this from Steven's perspective as one of the two people that are in on the idol. Hina is moving, they're cooking a little bit, and I like where it's going with MC. And we might as well break into the biggest thing of the episode. The thing the episode is basically completely all about. You have Jake sitting on the beach at Kele. Kele, he's sitting there, refreshing his mind because it's a tough game, 26 days of torture essentially. And he said, "Hey, buddy, guess what? A snake just latched onto my foot." And in the classically charming, docile humorous, chill Canadian way. He said, "Oh yeah, snake snatched onto my foot." After talking about it for a little bit, they're like, "Oh, is it this snake?" And they pulled out a binder. Alex pulled out the binder because apparently they have a binder at the camp in Fiji, and pulled it out and said, "Oh, it was this one. This one's really venomous." And he said, "Oh, okay, actually my foot's starting to hurt. Get the medical team out." Medical team comes out, puts him on a boat, drags him away to med camp. And, it starts to get really dramatic really fast. Someone's screaming out, "Is he breathing?" And Jake seemed like he was, fine at that point, relatively fine after such a big snake bite. They get to the med camp and put all the oxygen on and carried and all that stuff. You have Probst saying, "Get the camera in his face. We want to see how exhausted or close to death he may be." And, the doctor comes out and says, "I think it's a dry bite." And a dry bite, as we learned in this, means that it was a bite where there was no venom coming in. And it seems the banded sea crate, which is the one that bit him, is one of the most venomous snakes in the world and least aggressive, because that means Jake would have had a really hard problem. He potentially would have died. And that's the truth of it. Thankfully, that's not the case, because there are anti-venoms that can be used for snakes. From what I've learned from Dr. Omer Zahir from Survivor 42, getting a specific anti-venom for a specific snake is really difficult. And they have to be made a certain way. So it can be costly and time-consuming, and there's no guarantee you have it on hand. Survivor, I would think, should have it on hand. If there's a binder with like 5 pages in it with these very dangerous creatures, and you're going to be in Fiji for a really long time anyway, you should probably stock up on that. So, thankfully, he didn't have to really worry about that because there was no venom. Great. Regardless, the doctor pulled him from the game, which when I was sitting on the couch, I was like, oh, I guess I was wrong. He's not going to be pulled from the game, because the previews made it look like he was definitely being pulled from the game, which that's another issue. I don't know why Survivor just gave away that Jake was going to be pulled from the game because of a snake bite. I don't understand that. But that's a different discussion. I guess they're like, we want you to have water, we want you to have rest, we want the wound to heal, so we have to pull you from the game, Jake, which is really unfortunate because Jake was on the way to having a pretty good game, I think. And, he had talked about, the birth of his child. That was a positive, that I guess he gets to go back, and he did. He got back and he got to see the birth of his child. But the negative is, the thing that really got me in the first episode of the season was he said, "I'm out here playing, and my father has a disorder, glaucoma, where he's losing his eyesight, and he may never see me play Survivor ever again." With him going home, that means his father's going to see him just get pulled from the game, and maybe we'll never get to see him fully succeed. And that's crushing. I mean, there's a million reasons why I feel bad for Jake from getting pulled from the game. Obviously, he had $1 million taken away from him when he's about to have a kid. I guess the positive is he got to see the kid be born, but he could have made a huge dent in any kind of debt that they would have in the future with having this child. So that's an opportunity that was totally ripped away from him. And from a competitive standpoint, he didn't lose. A snake took him out. And I know it's very popular to have snakes take you out of the game in Survivor, but not like this. This is an actual snake for a change. And I said it before, if you're a fan of Jake, you're upset that he was pulled from the game because your favorite was pulled from the game. And if you didn't like Jake, you should be upset that he was pulled from the game because you want to see people like Jake, kind of like a David Kinney from Survivor 48. If you don't like them, you want to see the fall of the king. You want to see them go down, because from a narrative standpoint, it's lame to have, the big bad villain just be pulled off. Like, has anyone ever seen Star Wars: The Last Jedi? Snoke, Lord Snoke? That's basically what I'm saying. And obviously it has huge ripple effects on the other members of Kele, but without getting into that too much, I just want to say real quick, Jake, I'm so glad things have worked out ever since. You have a beautiful kid, you are healthy, you're happy, and it looks like you're out there kind of mixing it up, and it's heartbreaking to have the game ripped from you. So lots of love to you, bud. Quick kind of commentary on the whole like medevac and showing the binder. I despise that they showed that they have a binder at each tribe. I hate it because, and I know this is overdramatic opinion. I totally know that it shouldn't bother me as much as it does. But when Alex showed the binder in that confessional, I said to myself, why are you showing me that this show is fake? And now, it's not really fake, obviously. It's not fake. They're out there surviving. They're doing all that stuff. But it's telling me that the show is not as authentic as it's supposed to be. The originally Survivor was supposed to be a documentary, people surviving against the elements and each other to claim the $1 million prize, right? Now, what I'm being told is they have very organized binders to make sure that they're not doing anything remotely dangerous if they can. And I don't like that. As a fan, I'm sitting here and I'm like, stop breaking your own illusion. Get out of your way. That's my thought. Because Jeff Probst in the new era in particular is all about making sure that everyone understands it is authentic, there is real danger, there is real struggle. And then when I saw the binder, I just said, what? Are we in a training session? Is this not real? Is this a simulation? Which I guess it is, a simulation of survival. But that's not what you're selling to me. You're selling to me it's real to some degree, right? I mean, I know they have other things out there. They have like a med kit. They have like tampons and stuff like that. And condoms even out there. But that's stuff that you don't advertise on TV by showing it in a binder. And that's what got me. And the medical camp stuff. You know, actually, for some reason, I didn't like it because I thought that ruined the illusion too. I hate when we could see the cameras, we could see the boom mics, I hate that. I think that's a very performative attempt for Jeff Probst and producers to turn Survivor into, you know, a drama along the lines of like CSI or something. And it's not. It's a reality show. It's supposed to be a documentary. So, yeah, I guess it's real. The boom mics are there and you're recording it. But pretty much in the past, they made sure that you didn't see that stuff because they want it to be, you know, about the players and what's happening in the frame is what's important, not behind the frame, you know? Though I don't have as big of a complaint about that because in the past when people have been medevaced, they've always like zoomed in, you see the doctor working on them, which obviously it breaks the illusion that a doctor is working on the players. But it didn't bother me as much. This just felt a little weird because it was at their actual medical tent. The whole Jake thing, oddly enough, like I felt bad the whole time, but there were moments where I was like, I feel like you're breaking the illusion of some of this when you don't have to. Like Alex holding the binder, I thought it added nothing to the scene. You didn't need it to tell me that it was a venomous snake. I, as a viewer, have Google at my fingertips if I really didn't believe you on the TV screen. So I didn't know why they needed to show that there was an actual binder with resource information in there for the castaways. It just felt like, it's like, all right, what else are they getting? Are they really starving? Is there really no flint? Can they not get fire? Are you sure someone's not slipping them something? And these are questions that have been answered for like 25 years. But this is one of those things that made me go like, well, if I was a new viewer, I would ask myself that question. It just felt unnecessary. It's exposing your own business, in my opinion. Anyway, enough of my old man rants at the clouds. It was a big, big moment, and that was awesome to see. Not as awesome for Jake, and I'm thrilled that he's very healthy. And the immediate ripple effects of this, I mean, you know, everyone finds out the challenge that he's been pulled from the game. Kele, Hina, Uli, everybody. And everyone is sad. Everyone is somber. You know, Hina's like, that's, you know, it's so disappointing. That's not the way to go. Uli, same thing. And Kele obviously is crushed. You know, Sophi's crushed because that was his number one ally. Alex is crushed. That was his number one ally. And Jeremiah is crushed because obviously the big beefy guy and, you know, is gone now. And they have a hard time competing in this challenge. They run the challenge anyway, which was very interesting. But I think it's actually pretty cruel that Jeff did that. There's precedent for it. I mean, it has happened before, but it's also happened the other way, where a tribe has lost someone, so they don't run the challenge. In this instance, it seemed like they were really interested in pushing that disaster tribe button very hard because there was no way Kele was going to win. The challenge diversity in New Era Survivor at this point, again, not to be dramatic, is a bit of a joke. Like, it's always, you know, get in the water, go over something, under something, get puzzle pieces, put puzzle together. And that's how it is almost every single time. And I respect it because it hits on a few different key things. But as we know, and we've known for a very long time, the puzzle is the great equalizer. And it always has been on Survivor. So unless you're a freak like Boston Rob or Joe Anglim, who's good at everything, the chances are you're going to have a tribe that's going to be terrible at one of those things, the main thing being the puzzle. And Kele has never been good at the puzzle. Every single time, they've been horrific at the puzzle. Physically, they've been ahead in a lot of the challenges. But the problem is the physical part does not matter unless there's something where your tribe just can't do it. But with a puzzle, they're going to have no chance if you just are just really bad at puzzles. And to be fair to like casting producers and the folks that make the tribes, you know, to be fair, you don't know really people's level of ability with puzzles, but that's where I'd say like, then don't bank on the puzzle being the deciding factor for every challenge. Maybe there's one where they do the food eating competition like they used to back in the day, because who knows who's going to win that one, right? Or you could do something as simple as, let's just do a straight up strength one, where it's not even just strength, but it's willpower as well. Some people just aren't good at puzzles, and Sophi, Jeremiah, and Alex apparently are not. So it was unfortunate to see them get kicked over and over and over again for this challenge, and they lose miserably. So you're hearing it here. There needs to be alternatives so badly to what's happening in the pre-merge challenges. We need to stop ending on puzzles because you're going to get disaster tribes every single time. And I like a good disaster tribe. I don't like a guaranteed disaster tribe almost every season. I guess the positive is for season 50, there can't be a disaster tribe, can there? Purple would probably be my guess, but I don't know. Hopefully it ends soon. Now, with all that said, Kele loses the challenge, as I said, and they have to go back and they have to decide between the three of them who's going to go, Jeremiah, Sophi, or Alex. In a perfect world, I think Sophi wants to get rid of Alex and his idol. The problem is he has an idol. And when there's only three people, it makes sense that you're going to use that damn idol. And Sophi is like, all right, let me work on Alex and maybe we can get Alex not to use it, to Jeremiah. And then Jeremiah is talking to Alex, and obviously they're like, well, maybe we should, dump Sophi. But while that's happening, Sophi hiding in those bushes, going, what's going on? And that's where she's like, yeah, I feel a little less bad about the idea of throwing out Jeremiah's name to Alex. Let's make sure that we're actually going to get rid of Jeremiah now. And Alex, a little cagey about it. I don't know. Should I use my idol? I don't know. Because Sophie's trying to butter him up, make him feel like that idol play is totally unnecessary. But at this point, I don't know if Sophi really cares if he does or doesn't, as long as it's not her after that kind of a conversation. Now, they go to tribal council. Seems like there's kind of a good back and forth. Will they, won't they? And, time comes, you put pen to parchment, and it's time to play an idol. No shots in the dark, thankfully, although I think it would have been kind of fun to see if somebody could try to force the other two to use their shots in the dark by making them uncomfortable, but not a good proposition at the time. But it's time to give up the idol, and he gives his idol to Jeff and plays it for himself, which I wholly agree with. I think that was the right move. Obviously, in the end, Jeremiah got 2 votes, and Alex got 1. It was an unnecessary idol play, but I would have done it too. There's only 3 of you. Play it, and then you have another day to fight and survive, because you never know what's going to happen the next day. Like a tribal swap, for example, which looks to be happening in episode 4. So I think Alex made the right move. He guaranteed that he's going to move forward. Sophi can't blackmail him and tell everyone that he has an idol because he just got rid of it. So it's actually going to be a blessing in disguise, I think, for Alex that he played it. And then, of course, Sophie's pretty stoked because she made it through. And now she's got a bond with Alex because they voted together, even though he probably doesn't know that she really wanted him gone for the most part. And 3, Alex doesn't have the idol anymore. They could even potentially look for it again after it had been rehidden, this tribal council. So maybe they'll find it. But again, there's a tribal swap coming. So will she be able to get a hold of it? I don't know, but at least the possibility is there. I love Sophi so much. I think Sophi is playing the game so well. She just lost her number 1 ally, like her true number 1, and still is making her way through. I am really excited for the next phase because I think that she's a baller. And when she's not in this spot where she has to be kind of like in the hero spot, like trying to do puzzles and stuff for her tribe, I think she's going to think more clearly. I think she's going to be more positive. I think people are going to want to connect with her even more than they already did before. And she had connections with everybody pretty much on Kele. I think Sophie's going to continue to kick ass and the queen's going to stay queen, except she's not going to be the Kele queen anymore. It looks like, she may be on Hina based on the previews. But the good thing is there's a lot of really awesome, powerful, cool players that are going to be on new Hina. And I'm really excited to see how that shakes out for my lady known as Sophi. I feel really bad about Jeremiah being voted out. It's like unfortunate. The poor bastard Jeremiah. I mean, he turned the corner for me about episode 2. I'm starting to really like him. Based on previews, I was like, oh god, they're going to make him the evil laugh guy. And that's not his fault. That's the editor's fault. But I was like, oh, they're going to make him that. And it seemed like he was on his way to that, but I was learning his personality. He's sharp. He's witty. I think he was linking up with the right people like Sophi to move forward. Unfortunately, he couldn't fend off the disaster tribe issue. And seeing him go home bothered me, and it bothers me kind of in 2 different ways. Obviously, I was starting to like him, which is a bummer. But the biggest thing is he went home in an episode where Jake went home from a snake bite, where they made the whole episode about Jake. So Jeremiah, let's imagine you're a fan for a really long time. You get to go on Survivor, and it's your boot episode. A lot of people, they feel pride in their boot episode to some degree. And for him, like this week doing press, I'm sure they just kept asking him about the snake biting Jake and his reaction to it and his fear of that moment, which is fair because, again, it was a historic moment. But man, at the cost of Jeremiah's boot episode, I'm sure he probably didn't get the special kind of care from press that he probably deserved, and I hope he's dealing with everything okay too. Jeremiah leaves the game where his 3 biggest traits, which is more than some people ever get, by the way, is 1, he's going to be known as like the evil laugh guy for a while. 2, he's going to be known for the guy that Nicole spit in the face of, and 3, the Jake snake bite happening during his boot episode. So it's going to overshadow, his departure, which is really unfortunate. But it looks like that's the hand he's been dealt. So long, Jeremiah. Hopefully, we see you again in the future. And if not, you played your heart out. But that's it from the episode for me. I thought it was a good episode. We're seeing the season take shape. Finally, I mean, I said in preseason, these Survivor 49 bastards, I feel so bad for you because you're going to be overshadowed by season 50 for ages. But we're starting to, dive into the story. We're starting to connect, and that's just how it goes. We need time to connect. I think right now we're in a ripe old time to get that going, especially with a swap. But that's going to do it for the episode. Thank you so much for watching this recap. If you have any thoughts on what happened this episode and the future, let me know down below in the comment section. I would love to chat with you. Otherwise, hope you have an amazing day, everyone. You take care. Goodbye.